Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio, Phil Williams, here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And like the dude just said, solid conservative and just plain right. Well, welcome to the Monday. The Monday. This is Monday all day long. And Boomer's on the board. Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, that's it. Monday.
Monday, and we're going to talk about it. I tell you what, we'll decide whether we're going to talk about your NCAA pick'em.
We'll decide.
We'll decide. I don't know that it should be spoken of. We'll see. We'll see. Hey, welcome to the Monday, though. We got a great show laid on for you. Coming up at 3 o'clock today, Alabama State Auditor Andrew Sorrell, who's been on the show a number of times. But Andrew Sorrell just got back from the Club for Growth Foundation meeting, the same one that Stephanie Smith and myself have been to. We're going to get some thoughts from him on ESG and what's happening in the state of Alabama and his role as the auditor to ensure that things are above board and that ESG is not impacting our state finances. In the meantime, though, we got a triple dipper on top of that is like, wow, hit it.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. Number 1, right out the gate, I'm calling it the ESG GPA. How's the scorecard going on that ESG stuff? Not so good, it appears. Yeah, we're going to talk about ESG, why it matters, the environmental, social, and governance aspects of investment in banking and insurance. Yeah, how's that playing out? Well, it's not working out the way they thought it would, although there have been a few setbacks for our side as well. But anyway, we'll talk about it. Number 1, the ESG GPA. Number 2, this is maddening to me. This is antithetical to common sense. Have you heard about little red classrooms? Little red classrooms. What could that be? Did you know that the Communist Party of China, the CCP, is actually helping fund educational resources in our K-12 schools across the United States? Yes, to the tunes of millions of dollars. Little red classrooms, we'll talk about that one, number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, this is a series of official decisions and things that are done by people who are supposed to know better that I just found myself going, well, you can't make this stuff up. And it got to the point that I finally decided to name the whole section, this whole third dipper. You can't make this stuff up. It's a series of stories that may just either make you laugh or aggravate the stew out of you. But yeah, number 3, triple dipper. Can't make this stuff up. All right, so let me move into my comments here. I will remind you that the daily Rightside Way monologue is sponsored for us by the Southern Immediate Care clinics all across North Alabama. They've got locations in places like Gadsden, Anniston, Atala, 5 locations around Birmingham. Southern Immediate Care, open 7 days a week, walk-ins welcome, and they will also see all ages, and this is who I use, by the way. So yeah, stay tuned. More to come on that. I'll tell you more about them later, but for right now, just know this. Southern Immediate Care, they are the sponsor of the Rightside Way monologue. All right. I don't want to brag or anything, but back in the day, when the lovely Charlene and I were dating, I was one smooth operator. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge I want to sell you. But seriously, I was doing what I could to impress the lady that I've now been married to almost 37 years. When we first met, Charlene was waiting tables at a Ruby Tuesdays, and I would occasionally find out when she was working and go in, not because I was hungry, but because she was the one serving the food. On one particular day, I was in the mall where the restaurant was located, and I went in just to get a cup of coffee. It was like $1.25 or something for a cup of coffee. So it'd hardly be worth her time to wait that table. You know, it was me. Until Phil, the big spender, dropped a $10 tip and headed for the door. She actually ran out the door with the $10 bill in her hand and said, "What are you doing?" To which I replied with something suave and debonair, like leaving a good tip for my favorite waitress. Like I said, one smooth operator. But aside from the fact that I was trying to impress my girlfriend, I do believe that tips are important. My pastor even stresses there are times when you need to consider how little some folks who wait tables are making and leave what he calls a big honking tip just to bless them. Folks don't realize that waiting tables usually means you get paid less than minimum wage because allegedly the wait staff will make it up in tips. The often overlooked fact, though, is that when you eat at a place that also has a bar, that the wait staff generally has to split their tips with a bartender. So yeah, those net earnings get kind of slim when you're waiting tables. I used to deliver pizza myself. I can tell you that tips meant the world. Sometimes you get that person who'd meet you at the door and put a $5 bill on top of the box and say, hey, thanks. Other times, though, you'd drive up to the beautiful house with the nice landscaping and the stable full of exotic cars, and they'd short you and act like they were doing you a favor. Tips are important. They're designed to do two things. A tip provides a little extra compensation for someone who's done a good job, and a tip will also bless them and show your appreciation. But there's a strange phenomenon that we're experiencing now as a culture. Have you noticed it? It seems that at every turn, we're being asked to give a tip for someone who has done nothing. The other day, Charlene and I stepped into a little frozen yogurt shop. It was self-serve. We walked in, we picked up our own cup, we served ourselves, and added our own toppings, all the while the staff stood behind the counter and just watched. And as we checked out, the very nice lady said, please insert your card, it will ask you a question. And the question was whether or not I wanted to leave a tip that amounted to a percentage of the overall sale. No. I literally did all the work and paid you for it, so why would you also ask for a tip? Now, I've heard this new socio-cultural trend being referred to as guilt tipping, or even gratuity gouging. The worst are the ones that have you pay before you get the product. Like the barista, who simply pours a cup of hot coffee, grabs a muffin out of the display case, but yeah, she charges you first, and you just have this sudden sense of dread that she just saw you did not leave a guilt tip, and now she's reaching for the special muffin. It's really gotten to be aggravating, though. So much so that reports are already being generated labeling customers as having tipping fatigue. It's as if there's some new demand that we must give something for nothing. I'm all for doing something to bless others, but it's a bit different when you do nothing but stand there with your hand out with some sort of misplaced sense of expectancy. I mean, what are they going to have to watch out for is when the market begins to self-correct, and it will. If you go for the guilt tip too often, then pretty soon you're going to get fewer tips as people begin to recoil from the ever-present panhandling that too often accompanies the most modest of transactions. Y'all, it's no different than the guy who walks up at the red light, spits on your windows, and then demands payment for allegedly cleaning it. They did something you didn't ask for, they asked for payment they didn't really earn, and therefore you are now expected to comply. Well, people don't like to be pressured into tipping. In fact, people don't like to be forced into doing anything with their hard-earned dollars that they don't already want to do on their own. That's a part of what makes the free market free. You see, most times the concept of the free market deals with the producers of goods and services. The concept that building the better mousetrap means that your company will rise to the top in a sort of survival of the fittest scenario. But the other half of the free market is the consumer. In a truly free market, consumers want what they want, not what they are told to want. I mean, think back to the early days of cell phones. They were once considered novelties. Then they were good to have, but they cost a lot if you exceeded your plan. Then they became convenient and could even fit in your pocket, and then texting became a thing, and then they included cameras, and then they got internet access, and now it's almost inconceivable to imagine the idea that someone doesn't have a smartphone with them at all times. And many houses have even done away with their landlines. You see, that's an example of the ability of the private sector, left alone to do its work, building successively better mousetraps, and consumers deciding that those devices, those are what they want. Only now we have electric vehicles. They could easily move through the same stages of market integration and expansion that I just described for the now ubiquitous smartphone. Over time, the private sector would invest its own dollars, grow their market share, prove their worth. But no, quite the opposite is happening with EVs. You see, much like guilt tipping, we're being told to spend our money on something we haven't necessarily asked for and don't necessarily want. The electric vehicle is becoming the automotive version of guilt tipping. Something for nothing. A technology which has merits and certainly has its drawbacks. Some will choose it and many will not because we're still accustomed to being in a free market society. But more and more the government has decided that they are like the expectant barista who tells you what to pay and when to pay it and then waits for the card reader to ask you a question about tipping before you're ever allowed to get what you really came there for. They will ask, they will cajole, and they will push their government subsidized not so free market, and you and I will have to make a hard decision. Do we look them in the eye and tell them they haven't proven their worth and risk getting the special muffin? You see, yeah, free market economies only work when the consumer is actually free to choose what was actually freely developed and marketed. Otherwise, the market will self-correct as consumers get EV tipping fatigue, if you know what I mean. So how about this, government? Stop asking for something for nothing. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Yeah, there you have it. I mean, how many times have you gone into a self-serve place and they ask, do you want to leave a tip? For what? Because you asked the question? No. Well, the same is true right now for electric vehicles. Are they cool? If you want one, go get one. But you know what? Don't tell me I have to give you one. Otherwise, that's not a free market. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Yeah, tell you what, text lines are already open. 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it or call it, same number both times. Several of these are already in. Brian from Huntsville says, EVs are difficult to tip. Those batteries are heavy. Yes. Wes from Huntsville says, how about the drive-through asking to round up to the next dollar for local schools? Isn't that what my taxes do? How much of that donation does Taco Bell claim? I don't know, but I have not. Have you heard of that one, Boomer? You go into the drive-through and they ask you want to round up your bill to the next dollar?
Oh, they do that all the time now.
Do they really?
Yeah, everywhere.
What the heck?
Hey, you want to round it up to the next dollar? No.
Okay. Morgan from Fort Myers, Florida, by the way, says, I'm not interested in a bunch of little kids in a third world country getting cancer from mining cobalt so I can virtue signal to the end of the world how wonderful I am because I drive an EV. Morgan from Fort Myers, just laying it right down there where the baby goats can get to it. JT Lacey Springs says, tipping, a recent experience. I heard a person called in a food order and then asked to tip and did. When they arrived to call the order, was asked to tip and did a second time. Upon getting their food and paying, guess what? Asked a third time to tip. No, that's tip gouging is what that is. Now you and I go to the same church. Boom, you've heard our pastor talk about giving a big honking tip before.
Oh yeah, and my wife and I usually do big tips only because we were both in that service industry a long time ago, so we understand.
I get it. I mean, that's where I'm at. I mean, I'm trying to do the same thing.
But you also have to do a good job.
Yes. And there have been a couple of conversations. In fact, I think it's gotten worse since COVID. There have been a couple of conversations where you're like, dang, honey, I don't even want to leave a tip. Well, leave them something. Okay, but do I have to leave, like, what do I leave? Well, okay, what's the bill? And then we'll talk about it,
You know what? I kind of always wanted to work at, have you ever heard of that restaurant up in Chicago called Ed Bebek's? So the servers there are completely and utterly rude, but you go there for that service. Like
go
that's
there to be rooted out?
Like I'm talking like completely like go get it yourself type. I mean, it's hilarious, but people go there because of that.
No.
Yes. You need to look it up online during the next break.
I mean, what kind of fare is this? What kind of food you have in there?
I think it's like pizza and drinks, and I think it's all that stuff. It's like, yeah.
I can.
Ed
No.
Bebek's.
No.
I want to go there just because of that.
Now, and I like the place. What's the place down in South Alabama, home with the throw rolls?
Oh yeah, they throw the rolls.
They
at
throw
you.
the rolls at you,
Yeah.
which I always like that. I mean, I'm good. Throw me a roll. They sling it like a baseball, but and they're pretty accurate. But and if you don't catch it, it's going to go rolling down the table. But no, I'm not all in for the idea of, hey, let's go down there and get abused. I mean, there's got to be some kind of masochistic
And
tendency.
now it's you can just go anywhere and get abused mostly.
Speaking of abused, let's talk about Pick'em for a minute.
Oh, ouch. Well, I'm no longer in first.
Okay, you're all the way down to fourth place.
I had a bad week, guys. But I will say,
But
John
McQueen-
from Huntsville is up in second place now.
He climbed. He was
climbing up.
What was he in seventh last week? Now he's in
believe
second.
so.
John from Huntsville and McQueen is in
First
place.
She's in first.
All right, now
place.
Truth. Are you helping McQueen pick the teams, or is she doing it?
Honestly, this past week I did do her picks for her.
Shut up.
Week.
Did
This
you
past
really?
week I did. All the other ones she's been doing, but this past week, and I should have just done the exact same thing, because that was my first round as I picked them, and then I went back on mine because I thought I was slick, and I messed mine up.
So what you thought you did was give your wife the lower slate.
I didn't go back on her, but I will say I did give her the chance to go back and change hers. I pulled it up for her and said, hey, would you like to change any of these? And
she went,
she said, no, I'm
No,
okay.
good.
Okay. I said,
Whatever
all
you
right.
pick.
So I did give her the chance.
I'll be the winner. I'll be the champion.
Yeah.
I am all the way in 56th place now. Is that right?
Yeah, 56. But I'm going to give Goat Roper and Warbama the thumbs up because they were first this past week with 23 points each.
Speaking of which,
They did great.
before we hit the break, I am so impressed by some of the names of the people in our college pick'em. We've got shoot, hang on, I just lost it. Where'd it go? I can't open up the names. We got Logan Sports. No, that's not even ours. Where's our right side?
We had a lot of
board?
ruffian. We had a
Yeah.
lot of ruffian Paul, ruffian Wayne. School choice now. Hog heaven. Let's see here. Old Sarge. We got Brian from Huntsville.
There were
some
a
of
couple
it,
that
Trina
cracked
from
me up.
Altamont, Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid.
Roy. Pastor Barnes. Rappin' Duke. I love it. There's some good ones in here. Money Bags.
Money Bags is in there. Yeah.
Chip the Barber. Yeah, so there's some good ones in here. Alabama Second Amendment.
Which you'd think with a name like that you'd want to go and let him win.
Yeah.
He's just like- Anyway, hey, is it opened up yet for? Is it opened up for?
It's
new
open
picks?
this week. You can go in and put your picks in.
All right.
I have
think
yet to do it though. I need
John
to do
from
it.
Huntsville actually just texted in and said he's already done his picks. So
Alrighty.
there's that, and he's in second place. So that means we're all playing catch up now. Francisco from Huntsville says, guys, always tip on the pre-tax, not the bill total. Can you do that? So
I guess you can see it.
Oh, he's talking about it when you see the receipt.
Right, when you see the receipt.
Okay, Raven from Russell says, as far as I'm concerned, anybody trying to make me do anything can make me like a basketball and bounce up off the floor and kiss my tail. Okay, he's all I ever ask is to be left alone. There you go. And then Peg Leg Dave from Gurley. Anyway, he's got some. I'm not sure what he's trying to tell me. He went to the same place you were talking about. No, it's another one.
Bebex.
It's one in Nashville.
Oh, there's one in Nashville
called
too.
Dick's Last Stand.
Oh, how did I not go there?
I don't know. You were there how long?
20 years.
Because you don't like being rooted out. That's why.
I just didn't hear about it. I would have gone.
Anyway, he says, plus all the beers were 40s. So anyway, all right. Anyway, more to come. We're going to jump right in with the ESG GPA as we start Dipper number 1. You guys stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right, covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. That would be this one. I'm talking about Alabama. And I mean to say this show goes way down south of Birmingham and up north of Huntsville and Tuscaloosa back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. So I'm going to jump right on in here. You are welcome to text it or call it as we go. You guys remember, we hadn't talked about it in a few months, a couple months at least. ESG. ESG, environmental social governance. This is where you do virtue signaling while you're banking, virtue signaling while you're investing, or virtue signaling while you're doing insurance. It is a shift towards basically saying, hey, it's not about profits. It's about what we can say in a woke way on Green New Deal policies or, LGBTQ2IA plus acronym policies, or for that matter, just whether or not government should be doing certain things or not based upon your liberal bent. Like, we shouldn't be pursuing legislation that bans drag queen story hour, whatever. ESG. Well, so in a major push, and this is, there's no conspiracy theory here. This is where it came from. The World Economic Forum, was it Klaus Schwab? You got the guy from BlackRock, what's his name? Larry Fink. Schwab and Fink have called for what they refer to as the Great Reset. There's actually a published paper by the World Economic Forum called the Great Reset. Their goal is to move away from what they call, profit-making ventures and into what they refer to as stakeholder investments. Stakeholder investments. What is stakeholder investments? I mean, shouldn't it be shareholder? No, it's stakeholders. Shareholders are the ones who actually make money. Stakeholders are people who just have a care or a concern, or they have a sort of a part to play, or what. That's what. So ESG, if you're not familiar, let me get you caught up real quick. ESG has been a push for wokeism, basically, in the otherwise free market. And you're finding places right now where ESG scorecards, I'm not kidding you, ESG scorecards from organizations that have basically made a living by creating their ESG scorecards will go out there and they'll figure out how woke a company is based upon whether they actually ran, Dylan Mulvaney on their beer cans or whatever. And they'll put together their ESG scores, and then these companies will publish them. Look at me. We're Coca-Cola. Look how woke we are. We're very proud of our ESG score. And you're going to find corporations you would not have even expected. Go look at a major, pick one, United Airlines, Coca-Cola, Regions Bank. Regions Bank's big on this. And you will find that they will be on their website. If you just typed in the name of a large corporation, perhaps one that you care about, and you just typed it in and then typed in ESG score, the Oracle of Google is going to bring you to a place, probably on their own personal website. At the very least, it'll be on another scorecard's website. But oftentimes the company itself will be just proudly touting how woke they are and what their scorecard is. And the reason why they're doing this is for a couple of reasons. Number one, they've been pressured to. Sometimes they're being pressured now by banks. There are banks that are refusing to lend capital to businesses based not upon their credit scores, but upon their ESG scores. What? Yes, I kid you not. There are banks right now that factor in not how solvent you are or whether you have the best widget to sell or what your credit rating has been or what your future investments are going to be. There are banks right now that are deciding whether or not you had enough LGBTQ2IA plus acronym commercials, or whether you planted a tree, or what. And all this is doing, though, by the way, is hurting corporations. What about insurance? Oh, yeah, insurance companies. There are insurance companies right now that are so swept up in the ESG scorecards that they will consider a company to be high risk, not based upon their insurability or the risk factors that they operate under, or the geographic region of the country that they're in, or anything else like that. No, they're basing it in part upon whether or not they're woke enough, based on their ESG score. And then you've got the worst of all, the portfolio managers. You've got companies out there that are traded publicly. Pick one again. Coca-Cola. Just throwing them out there because they're too often referred to as Woca-Cola. So Coca-Cola is publicly traded. You can buy their shares on the market. Your portfolio for retirement may have shares of Coca-Cola in it, depending upon how the market's going for them. And yet, what you're also finding is some of the big traders, some of the big portfolio managers are refusing to actually handle transactions for companies whose ESG score is not high enough to warrant being in their fund. What? Yes. What we're seeing right now around the nation is that state governments are having to take a stand because their entire state employee retention program is being jeopardized by these fund managers that are helping to manage their retirement funds that are not picking the most profitable venture. No, they're picking the most woke venture. And they're not that profitable. Story here from Breitbart caught my attention and got me sparked up on this. Story here from Breitbart came out over the weekend. More ESG funds in the U.S. closed in 2023 than in the past 3 years combined. Well, they hadn't been around that long. But it says more environmental, social, and governance investing funds have closed in 2023 than the last years combined amid political backlash and investor scrutiny. What are we talking about here? We're talking about funds like State Street, Columbia Threadneedle, Janus Henderson, Hartford Management, and others that, according to Morningstar, have decided to shut down some of their funds as being less profitable. Pray tell, why would that be? Because they're managing them on the wrong criteria. Morningstar says it also found that investors have pulled more money out of ESG funds in the first half of 2023 than they put into them. In other words, people are shying away because they're sick of seeing their investments go to things that are virtue signaling and not profit making. If you want to invest your money in whether or not a tree was planted, or in whether or not, a gay pride flag was flown, or in whether or not a local or state government decided to, pull sexualized books out of the kids sections of public libraries, if you want to invest in those things, I would suggest this: give your money to a charitable organization that fights those causes, and take the tax write-off. You'd be better off than trying to do so by investing your money in a firm that pushes for those things. Because when you invest in a company that pushes for those things, the return on your investment is probably not as good as the tax deduction you would have gone just by going to a charitable organization. Just some thinking. Hey, before I run out of time, let me grab the phone real quick. Is that line one? Brian from Huntsville. Hey, Brian, how you doing, buddy?
Doing okay. And part of the origins of ESG scores and everything were when they were trying to get banks not to give credit out to firearm manufacturers,
yes,
and ammunition manufacturers,
yeah.
and then it snowballed from that point.
Yeah, the other was the oil and gas industry. They're literally trying to get funds to divest themselves of oil and gas industry stock.
Yes, sir. So they just keep the same thing that they started with, and they keep piling on, so to say.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Y'all have a wonderful day.
You too, buddy.
You.
Yeah, it's an activist mentality in an investment or a business world. It doesn't work because people who invest in the shares of a company, they want to know they're getting something for their investment. What's interesting to me is Larry Fink has been the guy from BlackRock, been one of the lead proponents on this. He has been all in on ESG. He says he no longer uses ESG because it's become too politicized. No, it's because it doesn't work, you jackwagon. It doesn't work. That's why you're not using it. However, there was a setback this week. So there's been a lawsuit. 25 Republican attorneys general have filed suit against the Biden administration because the Biden Department of Labor instituted a rule that would allow for retirement funds to use ESG criteria. Well, okay. What you're basically saying there is, hey, employers, we're here to protect employees from all the mean things y'all do, except for their retirement plans. We need you to go woke with that. We're not worried about profitability or whether they have, anything to retire on. It's more concerning to us that you backed our ESG criteria. Yeah. Did you get the memo? Well, the federal judge, though, this past week shocked everybody on Friday afternoon by entering a ruling that actually granted the administration's petition to dismiss that lawsuit. In doing so, the judge, who is a Judge Matthew Kaczmarek, he's a Trump appointee. He's not known as a liberal judge. He wrote that the Biden administration rule can still comply with the statutes that require, profitability, because he said it prioritizes financial considerations over environmental ones and does not have any overarching regulatory bias for ESG. I got news. It shouldn't be allowed at all. That's the point. He said it wasn't the factor, it was a factor, and that was enough for it to pass the smell test. Well, Attorney General Ken Paxton, who just recently survived his own impeachment, says, we're evaluating next steps, including potential appeal. We'll continue to fight on all fronts to protect the interests of investors and all against the ESG agenda. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We come back from this break. I'll continue on with the discussion on ESG's GPA. It ain't good. It's a failing grade, in my opinion. And then, at the top of the hour, we'll be talking to our Alabama State Auditor, Andrew Sorrell. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Yo, solid conservative and just plain right, making common sense a superpower. Yeah, I'm saying Gary from Decatur says, oh no, I think I know exactly where we're going here. Yup. So he says the NFL must have the highest ESG score on the planet. Yeah, so Boomer, I'm sure you've seen the very first transgender cheerleader. Whoop, whoop.
Really, guys, come on. I mean,
There's nothing
who wants
sacred.
to look down on the field and see a guy in a crop top dancing? No, thank you.
Yeah, just
I get the, I mean, I understand male cheerleaders in college and what they do, but in NFL, it's more of like a dancer. And so you don't really need
I don't need a dude in a bikini top.
in a bikini top. Okay, if they're there throwing the girls in the air like a normal college guy or doing, maybe he's in the mascot suit. Okay, cool. But not what they're pushing on us. Stop pushing this on us and stop allowing it.
Okay, I found your new participation trophy.
There's a lot of participation trophies nowadays out there. And they're just
We're just gonna have
one on top of the other.
We're gonna have a
they
day
don't stop.
where it's just called Push Boomer's Buttons Days.
We're just starting to see the one after another after another.
Woo, Boomer's got issues today. Yeah. Well, Phil kept pushing them, so I don't. What do you expect of a guy? Keeping on with this thing about. So yeah, I guess the NFL probably does have a very high. I don't know.
But then again, they don't, because are they going to allow the transgenders to play football as well?
Oh, they have to now. They've changed the rules, dude.
I know.
I'm just saying.
I saw something on social media that the first, now it said the first woman to play football other than
collegiate football.
Collegiate
yeah, I saw
football.
That.
So
other than a kicker.
But I'm pretty sure it said woman. So
she was a safety for
right.
a
so
team that looked like it was about the size of a high school football team.
At least it wasn't a, I don't know. It's all over the place, figuring these things out and then having to identify and stuff. Just stop. Guys are guys, girls are girls. Boom.
It's not going to be. That's what we're going to have. We're going to have the boom moment. Oh God. Okay. Catch your breath, dude. It's all right. We're good. Y'all, he'll be back in a minute. Keeping up with this ESG GPA thing that I've got. By the way, top of the hour, State Auditor Andrew Sorrell coming on, one of the more conservative members of Alabama's government. BlackRock Inc., according to a piece here on an investment fund site, says BlackRock Inc., along with a slew of other firms, has recently shut down funds that overtly focused on ESG initiatives as the movement faces backlash from conservatives. I'm going to suggest it's not just conservatives. I'm going to bet, just saying, I'm going to, if I was a betting man, I'm going to bet that liberals like to know when they invest their money, they get a return on their investment too. Just a prognostication on my part. Just a bit of, advanced hyperbole. But the same article points out ESG funds are not only being ditched by investors, they are also facing additional regulatory scrutiny because they're shady as all get out. They're not set up for the right reasons. They're set up for virtue signaling reasons. And then people send their money thinking they've got something. Here's the thing. If you want to send your money to it, go for it. But there should be nobody whose funds are managed for them, like in a large-scale retirement portfolio managed on behalf of the state of Alabama, for instance, or a major big box employer that has, thousands of employees, and so they have a major retirement fund. And the employees just put money into their fund not knowing exactly how it's being managed. And that company makes a decision, hey, let's go woke. Cool. And next thing you know, John Doe and Jane Smith are retiring and they're thinking, I didn't get the return on investment in the last 5 years that I did over the previous 15. By the way, the state of Alabama has been working this issue. In May of this year, and I pulled a copy of his press release, in May of this year, Attorney General Steve Marshall had an opinion piece that was actually published in the Wall Street Journal. He called ESG defenders, in other words, those who support ESG, as free market disciples. Yeah, posing as, he says their ESG defenders are posing as free market disciples. Thank you. So in case you missed it, Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall's most recent opinion piece was published by the Wall Street Journal. Attorney General Marshall addressed his work defending the free market system from elitist global alliances determined to force their ESG policies on American businesses and consumers. So what he wrote here was that in the middle of, speaking at a hearing where he spoke along with a Utah Attorney General, Sean Reyes, they spoke to the House Oversight Committee. And a couple of liberal hacks, Representative Jamie Raskin, he's the guy that always wears a do-rag, and Representative Katie Porter, they both came out hard. One of them said, "You're just assaulting the free market. You're trying to stop the market from responding to the climate crisis." That's not the market's job. It is not the overall market's, it is not the portfolio manager's job to attack the climate crisis. If you want to attack the climate crisis, and you're not already a part of the green new steel being put on by the Biden administration, then go invest in a company that does something like that per se. Or go, by the way, and give a charitable contribution to Save the Whales or something like that. Who knows? Representative Katie Porter, Democrat from California, said, "Capitalism delivers freedom, which happens when markets let people choose what they want." Right. Like returns on their investment. So Marshall went on to say, the more sinister ESG acolytes, they're not even printing their woke messages on six-packs. They're actually proclaiming socially responsible financial institutions that are out there trying to gerrymander the market. Alabama did pass, as a reminder. We were one of the first in the nation. I get irritated at my brethren and sistren sometimes in the legislature, but we've got some good things happening, one of which was this past spring, we had the Alabama legislature pass an anti-ESG legislation that became law. Governor Ivey signed it. We'll talk about that and more with Alabama State Auditor Andrew Sorrell right after this. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 already. Dang, this Monday's going by fast. But hey, listen, we're gonna pause our conversation here with me and just go to a caller on the same topic. So Alabama's state auditor, Andrew Sorrell, former member of the Alabama State House and hails from the North Alabama region and now working as our state auditor. And he is also, by the way, just like Stephanie Smith was on last week, has been at the Club for Growth Foundation gathering in Washington, D.C. Want to get his thoughts on ESG, Alabama's position in the whole fight against ESG. And without further ado, let me just welcome him on. Auditor Sorrell, how you doing, sir?
Hey, Phil, always great to be on your show.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you making some time. Now, you guys are actually still traveling, am I right?
Yeah, that's correct. We stayed through the weekend. The Foundation Fellowship Program ended yesterday morning, and we're actually going to be here most of this week. We've got some good meetings lined up. Both U.S. senators are going to have breakfast with Senator Britt, and we're going to have a sit-down in Senator Tuberville's office Wednesday afternoon at 4:30. So I'm looking forward to getting to know both of them a little bit better and just talking about the state auditor's office with them, too. Make sure they're informed on what we're doing on our end as well.
Well, good deal. Well, listen, I know that you are known as a fiscal conservative. Very fitting, since you were at the Club for Growth gathering, which is one of their chief causes is fiscal policy. But let me ask you this: ESG, Alabama, your thoughts? Where do we stand?
We're in better shape than a lot of states. Of course, Senator Dan Roberts passed the ESG bill this year that had to do with state contracts. We can dive a little deeper on that if you want to. We've also seen State Treasurer Young Boozer pull $750 million out of BlackRock management.
Yeah.
He was frustrated, not trying to put words in his mouth, but he was frustrated with some of the things BlackRock was doing and kind of impeding the state of Alabama. So he said, hey, we want to do business with people who want to do business with us. So he moved $750 million of our taxpayer dollars out of their management. So I think we started to take some of the steps that we need to. I'm not sure we've gone as far as I would like to see us go. Other states are currently investigating everything in state government to make sure that we are not doing anything to promote ESG. Because what happens is you get these large states, like let's just take a large conservative state like Texas, for instance, and their money is in all these pension funds. Now, when you and I get our stock voting right little packets in the mail, let's say we own 100 shares of Ford, we probably don't take the time to vote for who the new CEO is because we know our 100 shares is not going to move the needle. But imagine if you're voting on behalf of the entire state of Texas's pension. Now you're talking some serious votes. So there have been some new companies that have sprung up. Vivek Ramaswamy, guy running for president, started Strive Asset Management to deal with this exact problem. And what Strive does is they review all the corporate shareholder proposals and the corporate officers, the people running for those board positions, and they vote conservative for the conservative state, which is the exact opposite of what BlackRock, Vanguard, and some of the other State Street, some of the other big ones are doing.
Well, and I got an article, the Breitbart ran one this weekend, said that I think it's Morningstar did a recent study that said that more ESG-based funds have closed down in the first 9 months of 2023 than in the previous 3 years combined. And I would Larry Fink from BlackRock is trying to say, well, it's gotten so political. I think actually it's gotten so unmanageable. They're losing the whole value of the investment in favor of going to the virtue signaling, and people don't want to lose their money in that kind of a market.
Well, I saw that Larry Fink said that, and it really cracked me up because I was like, okay, when was ESG criteria not political? It's always been political.
Yeah.
So basically, imagine you are the corporation, you are the CEO of a large corporation, and your corporation is starting to struggle and you're not really making money. What you can do is you can adopt ESG criteria, and you can say, we're no longer going to judge ourselves on that old-fashioned metric called profit, right? That's always how we've judged whether a corporation is worth saving or not, is if it made a profit. That's too antiquated. How about this? Why don't we judge ourselves based on how much diversity we have on our board?
Yeah.
Do we have some LGBTQ members? Do we have some minority representation on our board? How about this? How about we judge ourselves on how much we've reduced our carbon footprint in the last 12 months? How about we, judge ourselves on basically anything other than what has to do with actual profit? It's environmental, social, and governance standards. And when you do that, even if your corporation doesn't make a profit, you can point back to the last 12 months and say, well, hey, we might not have made a profit, but look at how successful we were at all of these other goals that we set for ourselves at the beginning of the year. It's kind of a very convenient cop-out for these CEOs. And it's no surprise that a lot of these ESG funds are going away because, the companies, you can only sustain a company that is losing money for so long. And I think people are getting tired of putting their money in ESG funds that are underperforming the rest of the market. By the way, another big problem with the ESG funds is companies are taking, they knew ESG was kind of a hot button for the last couple of years. All they did in some cases was take funds they already had, which weren't doing very well, and relabel them as ESG fund, and then everybody started buying them. The SEC actually had to come in and crack down on that.
Yeah, I saw that the SEC was cracking down with regulatory efforts, which is funny because technically that's the SEC operating during the Biden administration actually cracking down. But so I guess how's Alabama's look? I don't know if this is really falling into the auditor's wheelhouse per se. I'm sure it is in the treasurer. I'm sure it is in the AG, and I'm sure it is under contract review committees. But where do you see this going for the state of Alabama under the new anti-ESG bill that was passed?
Well, the bill specifically gave the enforcement mechanism to the Attorney General. Now, we're in good shape because I believe Steve Marshall is with us on this. In fact, he testified before Congress on ESG. I think he's written some op-eds on ESG. So I know where he stands. I'm very comfortable with the fact that he's going to be the one enforcing this new law that passed in Alabama. Unfortunately, the state auditor's office really doesn't have anything to do with these ESG standards. I wish we did. I wish I had some oversight, but I don't. That does, as you noted, reside with the state treasurer and the AG. Now, getting into the specifics of what that bill actually did that Dan Roberts was able to get through is it said, look, if you are going to be a woke company, then you're not going to get state contracts. If you're going to use ESG criteria, then we're going to basically not let you bid on our contract. Now, there's exclusions. If you're basically a financial institution, and I think this is where Regions Bank was able to get in there and get some amendments on that bill. They were really fighting the bill hard earlier this year.
Yeah,
I think it actually got failed in committee at one point. They were you can see their fingerprints on the final outcome of this bill. But by and large, that is going to take effect October 1st, and it's going to prevent a lot of woke companies in Alabama from getting government contracts, which I think is a great thing.
No, I agree with you, and I think it's going to be incumbent upon us to all you have to do is go to their websites. A lot of them. Like Regions and Coca-Cola and United Airlines, and you can go to their websites and just type in, ESG score, and they've got a page where they tout their ESG scores, and if they are, then it's a sure giveaway that they don't need to be contracting with the state of Alabama for whatever. Because people don't realize to the extent that state governments have to contract with outside private entities because there's no way for state government to do everything. You don't want to have your own airline. You don't want to have, your own whatever. And so check in to make sure that they are not laden with ESG policies and investments and banking and insurance and all of it is something that's going to be, it's got to be trackable, and we're going to stay on top of it.
That's correct. And to be really clear here, I'm not saying that I'm against ESG funds. If some corporation like BlackRock wants to offer an ESG fund and people voluntarily want to put their own money into it and earn a lower return, hey, that's a really dumb decision, but it's your money. You can do whatever you want. But it is good to see some of them failing for lack of support. Now, what I oppose is BlackRock changing the name of underperforming funds and labeling them ESG and tricking people. That's corrupt. I'm glad the SEC is putting a stop to that. And I'm opposed to Alabama or Texas or Florida, these conservative states. I'm opposed to their pension money going into ESG funds because there's something called fiduciary duty. And when you're managing money for others, your number one responsibility is to make the most money possible for them without taking undue risk. And they're trying to say, oh, well, there's a risk to the environment. See, now they've changed it from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. A corporation no longer just has to make a profit for the shareholders. Now they have to please all these outside interests. What other community interests are there that the corporation has to please or cater to? Well, one of the stakeholders is literally the environment. If you read ESG, the environment is considered a stakeholder in the corporation. It's just crazy.
It is crazy. And I guess as a final thought here to end our time, one of the things that's so frustrating in this too is watching lending institutions like Regions Bank that is withholding capital from good companies because they're not woke enough. And then the companies feel forced to have to go woke in order to get the capital they need to keep their business solvent. And that's just absolutely antithetical to the free market. And to me, any bank, any lending institution that is getting away from credit scores and moving to ESG scores is violating the tenets of what the banking industry should stand for overall.
Yeah, and I'm particularly sensitive on this topic because I've been a victim of cancel culture because I don't own, very woke businesses. One of the businesses I own is a gun store. I own 2 gun stores, one in Florence, one in Huntsville. Well, as you can guess, those are not very politically popular businesses to own for insurance companies. And our credit card processor canceled us with no explanation. And then our insurance company canceled us with no explanation, though the agent later told us that the reason was because we sell too many guns.
Wow. Well, there you have it. I mean, and you're a small business owner, which is the backbone of the economy, and all that does is hurt small business, period. Well, listen, State Auditor Andrew Sorrell, we appreciate your insights. Thanks for the work you do, and we look forward to hearing more about this in the days to come, all right?
Hey, thank you so much. Appreciate the interview.
All right, thank you. All right, folks, we're going to take a break right now. We'll come back and put a lid on this one. But yeah, this is something you guys got to stay in tune with because it's out there. And it is gerrymandering your economy in favor of wokeness. Gerrymandering your economy in favor of wokeness. And it just ain't right. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Yeah. Changing the world one soundbite at a time. Hey, listen, we're gonna switch gears here in a few minutes, but before I do, I got to tell you, during the break, you can hear ads playing, right? I know you do. You hear the ads playing. Just know this: Rightside Radio, we are a standalone entity. Okay, we're actually a 501c3. We run our business like any other business off of different revenue streams. One of which is charitable giving, and the other is ad sales. So if you listen to this show and you're thinking, man, those guys talk just like me. Those guys sound like I sound. They think like I think. And you know for a fact that all of our listeners, if that's the way it is, would be engaged by your particular business. Service-oriented or product-oriented. You tell us what you want to do. We'd love to have you advertise with Rightside Radio. So you don't call the station because we're not owned by the station. We're a standalone entity. We send them our signal. You go to our website, rightsideradio.org. That's rightsideradio.org. And you click on Listen Live. You click on Advertising and Contact, and you send us a message, and we'll get right back to you. And so we'd love to have you engage with us and join the team. You want to advertise on Rightside Radio, go to rightsideradio.org. Okay. Hey, a few text messages. I'll take those so I don't get too far behind. Crazy Joe from Decatur. He only communicates in memes. You ever notice that, by the way? Boomer shaking his head. Crazy. See what he's got. I got to be careful. I don't know what you're telling me there, Crazy Joe, but okay. It's just pictures of dogs and cats. Okay. Brian from Huntsville says ESG in the NFL. Thanks, Colin Kaepernick. Yeah, that was. Do you think that was kind of to me, that was the start when wokeism entered the NFL? I mean,
I believe so. I mean, when all that took place, then it just kind of took flight and never really stopped after that.
Yeah, which made no sense.
Right.
I mean, okay, anyway. I mean, to me, okay, I'm going to harp again.
Do it.
Just going to harp again for a second. It would appear to me that organizations like Major League Baseball, doing the, the Dodgers did the nuns of perpetual
right.
self-indulgence or whatever they call themselves. And then you got NFL with their, transgender cheerleaders and whatever. I mean, they're forgetting their base. It's like they have forgotten where they came from. It's like when Bud Light went with Dylan Mulvaney on that can. And the little, knucklehead woman who was the marketing director who came up with the idea, she literally said what she wanted to do was get away from that kind of frat boy mentality, kind of move it away from that and just kind of get away. That's who has made you rich. That's who has made you successful. Why would you sacrifice those who brought you there to go for those who didn't? It's because there's a lack of common sense in the boardroom too often these days. And the ESG is a classic example of a lack of common sense in the boardroom. Someone needs to get hold of the boardrooms and go, you know what, stop the freaking madness. How about we get back to becoming a profitable company with excellence in what we produce or provide? Period. That's why we exist. TL from Huntsville says, thank you for continuing to shine the light on the evils of forced ESG. Says, this menace is the same for the Federal Reserve's push to do a mandatory central bank digital currency. Oh, there you go. Taking away our right to choose our investments in our banks is a loss of fundamental freedom. Indeed. James from Harvest says, so I got a little behind, had to catch up on podcasts over the weekend, and I just wanted to inspire Phil to get back into that loud classic Mustang. Oh, thank you, brother. Says, mine's not a classic yet, but it's a 45th anniversary with Borla Max. She's loud, and by the way, I know you secretly love the color, which I can tell from the pictures is red. That's a good-looking ride, though, too, TL. I'm just going to say, that's mighty fine. Oh, I'm sorry, James. It's mighty fine. Yeah. Then he ends it with RTR. You had to go there. Marcus from Huntsville says, not sure about the rest of you. It sounds like our state auditor has 2 pretty successful gun stores I need to go visit. Check them out, man. Check them out. And then John from Huntsville says, speaking of NFL, did you see the Dolphins slaughter the Broncos 70-20? 70-20. I had not caught that. But that's
a complete smackdown.
That's more than a smackdown. That's like we just crushed your souls.
Right. Well, it was quite interesting because of the head coach of the Broncos said, I think it was last year or the year before, Tua, who is the Miami quarterback. He said, oh, he's going to be done. He'll be benched after a year. And Tua walked in there and put 70 points on the board.
70.
So,
How many of those were? I mean, did Tua run some in himself?
oh, yeah. I mean, he had some, but I mean, he threw a lot. I mean, it was a good game. So I was like, there you go.
That's epic. I was a Dolphins fan as a kid because I used to love.
Dude,
it was the day of
Marino.
Oh yeah, when I was pre Marino.
Oh, really?
I'm talking about Bob Greasy, Larry Zonka, Paul Warfield, Mercury Morris.
Man.
I mean, this is old school, dude.
Man,
this is old school.
Some old Dolphins right there.
That's some seriously old Dolphins. Like those Dolphins can't swim anymore. That's how old they are. Robbie from Maniana says, "Oh wow, the longest yard becomes reality." That's 70-20. You know, that's when you just look at the other team and go, "We're glad you showed up." Bless your hearts. Broncos got a whole bless your heart from Tua. That's awesome. All right, folks. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We're coming up with Little Red Classrooms. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. I'm talking about this one. I'm talking about Alabama. That's right. I'm talking about this show sends its signal like way down south of Birmingham and up north of Huntsville and Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, even Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. So I'm switching gears on the topic. Let me start by just saying that. So we're going to talk about Little Red Classrooms, but let me lay the proper foundation for this first. So you may recall this story 2 weeks ago. Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall, article in thehill.com. By the way, all our resources are up online. You want to go see one of these stories, you hear me rattling the paper, and you want to see that story for yourself, Boomer posts them up every day. So I get the show resourced out first thing in the morning. I send it to Boomer and Alicia gets them ready in paper form for me, and Boomer then goes ahead and puts all the resource links up on our website so you can get to them. So if you want to go to rightsideradio.org, go to the live stream page, there's a button that says resources. Just click on it, and all the links for each of the dippers is on there. So if I'm rattling paper, you can too. Story on thehill.com. You ready? China preparing for war with the United States, Air Force Secretary says. Okay. By the way, that's not a pundit. That's not a news commentator. That's not a radio show host. That's the Secretary of the Air Force. That's a cabinet-level position over one of the branches of our U.S. military. Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall warned that China was building up its military to prepare for a potential war with the U.S., and he said America must optimize its forces to counter the rising threat. He went on to say, we must be ready for the kind of war that we have no modern experience with. He said, war is not inevitable. This is sobering. He said, Kendall said it was vital to prepare for war because China is developing its forces at a rapid pace and has created 2 new military branches, a force designed to counter aircraft carriers, airfields, and other critical assets, and a strategic support service that works to achieve information dominance in space and cyber. Then he said this, China has been re-optimizing its forces for great power competition and to prevail against the U.S. and the Western Pacific for over 20 years. China has been building a military capability specifically designed to achieve their national goals and to do so if opposed by the United States. All right. Laying down that sobering discussion, what about where we are with Chinese influences in other places? We see the Chinese flying their spy balloons over the United States. I say balloons plural because if you recall, there was the one we saw. The ones we didn't see, though, were reported after the fact where, yes, it does appear there were several others in recent months, maybe years. Oh, really? So this has been a thing? So China flies spy apparatus over the United States. China is building a military that our Air Force Secretary says is designed for a future great power conflict with the United States. Then on top of that, you've got China buying up farmland and China taking steps to buy some of that farmland near our military bases. And then you've got this one, story on foxnews.com dated June 15th of this year. China has long used Confucius Institutes to project what they call soft power in the U.S. So soft power is when it basically becomes a projection of your foreign policy or military policy status in such a way that you're not inflicting a blow, but you are undermining capabilities. It says the Confucius Institute is only one tool, though, in the CCP's toolbox. They use research partnerships, talent programs, and other initiatives to gain access to sensitive research and technologies that fuel the People's Liberation Army's advancement. The FBI says up to $600 billion worth of U.S. intellectual property is stolen by China every year. $600 billion. We're not talking about just pirating albums. No, we're talking about major technology, intellectual properties, things that matter to the originators and to our economy. $600 billion stolen by China every year. And he goes on to say, it was a quote here by House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, China continues to steal our intellectual property. They continue to steal our patents. They manipulate their currency. And we believe they have a big footprint in academia with a massive spy ring within our research universities where they continue to steal our hard-earned research and development. Okay, this is not a nation that has our best interests at heart, is what I am trying to portray. China is not our buddy, all right? Now, are they a trade partner? Sure. I mean, I can go down to the local store where I don't necessarily care for the guy who manages it and buy something I need. So that happens. That does. We have trade agreements with China. China's reliant upon us, and in many ways we're reliant upon them. And there's this thing they call détente, where each side is standing there staring at the other, waiting to see what the other one's going to do, trying to establish the parameters by which we would remain on top while not giving away what things we need from each other. Détente. China is not a healthy friend for us on the world stage at all. In fact, if anything, they are an open adversary. They are just short in their behavior of being what Tehran is. At the very least, Tehran doesn't try to mask it. Tehran's out there saying, death to America. China's just, quietly, trying to make death to America. And then you have what we now are referring to as little red classrooms. So this is a fairly new thing. You've heard about Confucius Institutes, I'm sure. We talked about it on this show. We had the College Republicans made it their thing for a while, which I thought was a great project. They came out and said, look, we're college, that's happening. We're conservative, that shouldn't be a thing. And they made waves, and they made good waves, and they made a difference. So earlier this year, March of this year, 1819 News had a piece. Troy University closes its Confucius Institute after years of pressure from the DoD over programs' ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Keep in mind that Troy University was one of the #1 distance learning and research and development universities in the Southeast, in the nation really, for the Department of Defense. And they would not get rid of their Confucius Institute. If you're not familiar, a Confucius Institute is when programs are funded by the Chinese government to establish, basically they call it cultural and, language and cultural awareness. No, it's not. It's designed to curry sympathy and to gain, traction, and then at the same time to sort of infiltrate through the back door. Oh, you get to know each other. Oh, that professor that was sent over from China to do the little teaching on language and culture and gets to know his students. And one of the students happens to be a R&D fellow. Oh, that's great. What are you working on? Really, that's very neat. I'd love to see your lab one day. Could I see that? And it goes from there. Troy University held on to theirs. There's 18, as of March of this year, there are 18 Confucius Institutes still remaining. 2 of them were in Alabama originally. One at Alabama A&M, the other at Troy University. Alabama A&M closed theirs in 2021 after the Department of Defense refused to provide them any further contracts or grants under the NDAA of 2021. But Troy University, the NDAA gave them until October of 2023. They finally did it. The Troy Board of Trustees, and I know a couple of them, the Troy Board of Trustees finally voted to close it down effective March 1st. Y'all, that's messed up. That's right here in Red State, Alabama. When you've got a situation like that happening in Alabama of all places, and these are not liberal, college campuses. This is not like UCal Berkeley. This is not like going to Harvard. This is Troy University in Alabama. And they had a Confucius Institute, and they would not let it go. By the way, were you aware that Javelin missiles are made in Troy, Alabama? I don't know if it relates. I just find it interesting. Did you know that, military personnel the world over are using Troy University for distance learning so they can get their education credits? I don't know if it relates, but it sure is interesting. Well, when we come back from this break, we're going to switch gears because they began to get too much heat, apparently, the Confucius Institutes began to lose favor. The DOD and others, Congress got involved, and Confucius Institutes began to be a little dicey. Troy University shutting theirs down being a key example. So what have they done? They've moved to K-12 classrooms. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, Little Red Classrooms. We'll talk about it next. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. You're going to enjoy the last segment we do. I say you're going to enjoy it. You might want to throw your radio across the room. But the last segment we get into for the day is going to be called Can't Make This Stuff Up. Right now, so far, we have done the ESG's GPA. And we're right now in little red classrooms. I've got a couple of texts here real quick. Wow. So John from Danville, brand spanking new. Remember, we need to load him into the system. But John from Danville just texted in on regard to that ESG discussion we had. And with regards to Regions Bank, says Regions just lost a 45-year customer. That's hurtful. There you have it. What else have I got? Penny from Boaz said, I would not doubt that China is behind the transing of America. Weak nations lose wars. I would not be surprised either, but that would be quite the interesting strategy. So if you haven't heard, we talked about it right before the break, but you've got Confucius Institutes, which have been known for a number of years to be a thing on college campuses. It was irritating to me. I became aware of this a few years ago. I think it was around the time that Rightside Radio went on the air for the first time, which would be in mid 2021. And I'm talking to this young guy that I know that was real involved with college Republicans, and he said, "Have you heard about our latest cause?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "Confucius Institutes." And I said, "What is that?" And it was the Chinese Communist Party funding cultural exchange programs on college campuses nationwide, but not like just, hey, be aware, we're China, and here's how we dress, and here's the kind of food we eat, and here's what our history is. No, it was cultural influence peddling is what it was. Now we have a new report that came out from the group called Parents Defending Education. You may have heard of them. Parents Defending Education has been really, really in the mix on stuff like, parents' rights when it comes to, woke school boards and the over-sexualization of children and the books that are in the school libraries. Parents Defending Education has been very engaged in trying to remove influences that are considered to be, beneath our standards as a culture, really. And they just came out with a new report, and they call it Little Red Classrooms. Story here that I picked up, this one came off of News Nation Now. News Nation Now says, lawmakers on Capitol Hill are launching a probe after a new report revealed public schools across the U.S. have received more than $17 million in funding from the Chinese Communist Party through culture and language programs. They're not even trying to mask it. Parents Defending Education calls them Little Red Classrooms and says the CCP funds them through their Confucius Institutes. These institutes say it is their goal to teach language and culture, but Parents Defending Education claims it's really to further the Communist Party's global influence. So Confucius Institute programs in K-12 have been traced to around 143 school districts across 34 states. This is not small. I want to know, in fact, I need to find, if I can, I need to go back to this. Hey, Boomer, this is the first article, I believe, on the links. Would you see if there's a link in that article? I got to hang on to it. It's on the resources, but see if there's a link in that article to the states where these programs are based. Can you do that real quick? While he's checking that out, I should have thought of that before, because there is a hot link in the middle of my printout version, so I know there's something there. 143 school districts, 34 states. And by the way, under former President Donald Trump, it points out these were banned. They were called a foreign mission. And it's on the News Nation Now link, yeah. And then this particular commentator in the article says, this is a new tactic. They've had to shut down their college-level programs, so they shifted over to K-12. He says the Chinese seems to have then changed the parameters of the debate. They moved on towards grade schools in particular. It tells me the Chinese are incredibly resourceful in what they're doing, and they seem to have a real keen interest in going after schools to try and shape the next generation of Americans. It says a threat to our national security is also there because 20 of the school districts where these are located, 20 of these school districts receiving funding are located near U.S. military bases. Says China can spot and assess whose parents might work at these military bases and begin the process of trying to get information from within the facilities by, of course, talking to the kids. What'd you see, man? Did you see it in there?
There's a lot of links in here.
Is there a link to? There's one right in the middle. I tell you what. Let me open it too, and I'm going to find this up because I want to know if Alabama's got anything in here. News Nation Now. Yep, there it is. Link down in the middle. It says, "Bada boom, bada bing." No, it just has a link to another story about it. I don't think so. There's got to be a place somewhere in the. I'll tell you what. During the next break, I'm going to find out because I should have thought of this beforehand. But I want to know if Alabama's got any or any of our southern states. But if you've got 34 states, it's a fair bet that some of them in the surrounding area, at the very least, are in it. But then I've got this other piece here that came off of Daily Signal. Daily Signal points out that a congressman, Representative Aaron Bean, a Republican from Florida, is a chairman of the House Education and Workforce Committee on early childhood, elementary, and secondary education. So he's working the issue. And he says when you get into these Confucius Institute K-12 classrooms, it's not about them just trying, like I said earlier, to teach culture. No. He says you can't talk about Taiwan. You can't talk about Tiananmen Square. You can't talk about the Uyghurs. You can't talk about Tibet. You can't talk about the Dalai Lama. All these things that they're influencing are really trying to just grab the young minds of students to say how great China is and to gain influence. He says they held a subcommittee hearing titled Academic Freedom Under Attack, Loosening the CCP's Grip on America's Classrooms. He went on to say that there are over 34 states, 167 districts, 500 K-12 schools across the United States have allowed the CCP to establish itself under the guise of Confucius classrooms. First and foremost, that's just the problem. When you're looking at, this is the same country that a minute ago I just read out to you that our Air Force Secretary says is preparing for what they call a great power conflict with the United States. This is the same country that I just said a moment ago steals over $600 billion annually of our trade secrets and reverse engineering our systems and procedures. This is the same country that, by the way, has been buying up farmland in and around our military bases, the same country that flew spy balloons over the top of us. The same country is actually now funding Confucius classrooms in 500 classrooms around the United States. And I want to know where the school boards are on this. Are they aware? Who brings it in? Does the superintendent make the decision without the board's approval? Does the approval of the board come without any discussion? Do they just look at it and go, that's cool. I've always liked, Chinese food. Let's just try it. What could go wrong? All right, we'll keep this going. I'd love to hear some input from some of y'all. Little Red Classrooms, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. What did Jeff Rowe from Indiana send to us? I see he's got a meme. Is that him? Is that that's awesome. Oh, he went to Hippie Fest this past weekend, didn't he? Yeah. He said he was going to a Hippie Fest. Well, he's standing there with a with a rainbow painted Volkswagen, holding a "You Are Beautiful" sign and wearing a wig. He's all in, isn't he? He's
all in.
He's all in. He's into something. We know that. All right, Jeff. Glad you had a good time. Let's talk about this. So I did a little research during the break. I found what I was looking for. I will tell you this. This is not acceptable. It's not. You can't have the country that your own Secretary of the Air Force says is preparing for a Great War potential with the United States setting up in our K-12 classrooms. You can't. And by the way, I'm not above teaching world culture. I think it's a great idea to teach world events. I think you need to have an awareness of the world around you. I think it's fair to say, let's learn what other cultures are out there and how they differ from ours. That's all good. This is different. This is influence peddling. This is also, by the way, seeking to find ways to gain influence or to actually gain insights that are otherwise protected. So, story here on Newsweek. Newsweek dated 5 days ago. Concerns have been raised the Chinese state is influencing the American education system by offering millions of dollars in funding to public schools. It says Newsweek approached the Chinese International Education Foundation, which operates the Confucius Institutes, by email and didn't get comment. Parents Defending Education, that's the group I told you about a minute ago, told lawmakers their research suggested that in the past 10 years, more than $17 million had gone to the school districts around the United States in 34 states, and the District of Columbia, by the way. The college-level Confucius Institutes, I didn't know this, so I was glad to hear it. I knew they're shutting down, but it says of around 120 college-level institutes that have been set up around the U.S., only about 30 remained open as of 2021, and I think that's even smaller now, obviously. According to a 2022 report by the National Association of Scholars, Confucius classrooms are just a smaller version of the institutes. They teach Chinese language, but they also teach things that the Chinese have a special interest in. But America is not the only nation, so this is interesting to me. America is not the only nation to be grappling with how to treat Confucius institutes. After pledging the UK's 30 institutes, after pledging to close the UK's 30 institutes in 2022, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak had to backtrack this year as his government was seeking to thaw its relations with China. That's okay. So, we're just going to back off of that. If you want to influence our children, it's more important that we get that trade deal with you. So we'll let you have our kids. That's what that sounds like. So I told you during the break, by the way, I was going to go look and see, and I'm pleased to see. So I went actually to, this is the actual report by Parents Defending Education. Very comprehensive report. It has a map that shows the layout of where these school districts are. They are predominantly, by the way, in what I would call the northeastern section of the country, even though that northeastern section includes a lot of the Carolinas, Tennessee, Kentucky's very heavy in these. I am proud to say, boom shakalaka, proud to say, Alabama is one of the few states listed as not having any of these Confucius classrooms.
Good.
By golly.
Boom.
Just saying. However, surrounding us to our east and north, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, all have Confucius classrooms. Texas, oh boy, Texas. Like I said, Kentucky, rampant in Kentucky. Kentucky, by the way, home of Fort Campbell, 101st Airborne. So let's see what we got here. Within Georgia, the Fulton County School System. Yep. Within Florida, Charlotte County and Pinellas County. Within Tennessee, I'm scrolling down. Wait one, scrolling down. Sumner County Schools. Where's Sumner County? Boom. You lived up there. Is that that's not Nashville, is it? It's not. No, it's not. I think that's. You know what? I think Sumner County is just south of.
It's up north Nashville.
Yeah, and I think it's up near where Fort.
It's near it's the Gallatin area all the way up 65, so right into
Towards
almost the
Fort-
Kentucky
almost
area.
Fort Campbell. Fort Campbell straddles the line between Tennessee and Kentucky, and I think Sumner County might be the Tennessee side.
Is that up in near okay, yeah, maybe.
Okay, I think so. That would fit. They've got them in and around places like Fort Hood, Texas. They've got them in and around Fort Campbell, Kentucky, Fort Knox, Kentucky. They've got, good Lord, the Carolinas are just covered up. Let's see what I got here on North Carolina. Good Lord, 11 county school districts. And then in South Carolina, are they covered up there too? Nope, South Carolina's clear. Pennsylvania, big time. Oregon, whoo, big time. Pennsylvania, big time. North Carolina is one of the worst. New York State, 12 county school districts. It goes on, and it shouldn't be this way. I'm just going to tell you, this is the kind of thing that we have to take a stand on. This is where you call your state legislators and say, that ain't right, and it shouldn't be happening here. And if we're not going to allow it on our college campuses, why would we be allowing it on our K-12 classrooms? They do not have our best interests at heart. They don't. None. Todd from Decatur just texted in and says, just got back from China last week. What everyone needs to understand is that a potential armed conflict with China does mean a ground war. Okay, I get it. He said, I watched a small military parade one day while in Beijing, and there was no comparison. They looked unorganized and confused. In a boots-on-the-ground conflict, our men and women in uniform would wipe the floor with these guys. In fact, a small armed group of your listeners could probably wipe the floor with a much larger group of Chinese military personnel. An armed conflict with China means something far more devastating. Well, so yeah, China is not banking on a purely ground war, though. China is spending a lot of time dealing in technology, dealing in expansion of their naval forces, and then keep in mind that China, I believe, is a nuclear nation, and they don't play, and China, by the way, has the ability to do, and we do too, to actually take down systems. One EMP can take down a power grid. China has also been developing anti-satellite laser capability that from the ground could take out GPS satellites. And as soon as you take down our geosynchronous orbiting GPS satellites, you have just dismantled our ability to locate targets, to fire missiles, to fly planes. And we go back to the days of a stubby pencil and a compass and a map. And it's a whole new thing. Yeah, I see you there. Todd, by the way, thanks for that. He says did not mean a ground war. That's what he said. And I get it. I see that. Leanne from Huntsville says gain insight? No, it's brainwashing. Well, there you have it. And then Jeff from Indiana just texted in with one more picture of him. How many did he sent us like Jeff, if you're listening, you're apparently on repeat. We now have something like 7 or 8 pictures of you from the Hippie Fest. All right, listen, we're going to take a break right now. We're about a minute before the usual schedule. Little red classrooms. Y'all pay attention. They're not in Alabama right now, but they are certainly in the Southeast. And they're all over the United States. $17 million by the Chinese government to set up shop in our K-12s in 500 schools around the United States. Be on your guard, ruffians. We're going to come right back with a segment that I call Can't Make This Stuff Up. Y'all are going to enjoy this. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Yeah, saving the world one soundbite at a time, making it cool to be a conservative. So I gotta just pause here and tell you, somebody else who makes it pretty cool to do what they do is Southern Immediate Care. So Southern Immediate Care, a chain of clinics all across North Alabama, man, they are so good at what they do. And by the way, I'm not kidding when I say this is who I use personally. And I have used them now for quite a while. So well before they're advertising with us. But Southern Immediate Care, they are open 7 days a week in places all over North Alabama. I'm talking about Gadsden, Anniston, Atala, 5 locations around the Birmingham area. The 2 newest ones are in Chelsea and Hoover. Southern Immediate Care, 7 days a week, all hours. You can get in there, extended hours in some locations, all ages, I meant to say a moment ago. They can see you pediatric to geriatric. Listen, every time I have been in, super clean, super professional. You can get your shots and your x-rays there on the spot. They're not going to send you away somewhere to get it done. Southern Immediate Care. There's just an amazing group of folks. And by the way, I know the guy that owns the whole chain. And fellas, I'm telling you, he's a right side ruffian. So just if you need something, you wake up on a Saturday morning, someone's got a fever, you don't want to wait till Monday, 7 days a week, Southern Immediate Care. And when you go in, do me a favor, tell them you heard about it on Rightside Radio. All right, we're gonna dive into a little section here. I'll tell you what, let me take some text messages first. Kyle from Madison says Pinellas County, talking about those, oh yeah, that is exactly right. Pinellas County, Florida, where they apparently Chinese have infiltrated one of the local school systems. Pinellas County, Florida is directly across from MacDill Air Force Base, which is a headquarters for Central Command and Special Operations Command. Yep, CINTCOM and SOCOM, both. Thank you, Kyle, appreciate you. I didn't know the county name. I mean, I've been down there. I was actually did duty at MacDill, but brand spanking new in the text line. By the way, if you want to text it in, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. You can call it or text it, same number for both. But if you text for the very first time, do us a favor, tell us your first name and where you're from. Brand spanking new in the text lines. First contact, he says, Bob from Madison. Love your show. Kentucky might have the Chinese influenced schools because of McConnell's wife. I don't know that to be a fact. Is she? I know that she is Asian, but I don't know if it's Chinese. But anyway, who knows? All I know is Kentucky's covered up. John from Huntsville, where'd it go? I just lost my. John from Huntsville says, Boomer, I need at least one sound effect today from you.
Now I'm not going to do any.
Now Boomer just bowed up and said, now I'm not going to do any.
It's like a participation trophy.
Turn your microphone on so he can hear you berating him right now. Boomer says being told to do a sound effect is like getting like a participation trophy.
That's right.
It's got to count.
I'm gonna stand up. Bow up, buddy.
Even if I said jackassery, what would you do then?
I'll just do it with my.
Did you just make a chicken noise?
That was a chicken noise. Hee-honk, hee-honk. I should have done that one. There we go. I did make a chicken noise.
John, I hope you will grade accordingly. All right. He's beating me right now in the NCAA pick'em, so just as long as I can keep winning the daily scores, I'm happy. Okay. Hey, this next section, and we'll lap over to the next half hour, but you can't make this stuff up. My latest op-ed is out, by the way. 1819 News usually carries it on Mondays. Other papers pick it up around the state throughout the week. Allie from Athens runs it in Athens Now. Scott Buttram runs it in Trustful Tribune. But my latest one today is a takeoff on something I spoke about last week, and it's about what this first article is. This is a series of unrelated articles, but they are related in that you just can't make this stuff up. Like you look at it and go, dang, y'all. That was like next level messed up. So I know you've seen what happened in the Canadian Parliament. Boomer, did you see this?
Canadian Parliament.
It's important that you understand that
I did not see it.
that we are not the only governmental institutions that has our problems.
Oh.
So how would you feel if you were observing the goings-on in the U.S., House or Senate, and you saw them give a standing ovation to an older gentleman who was a World War II veteran?
Okay, great.
Who was a Nazi?
That's why you told me to turn on.
That's why. That's called baiting
man.
you in. So I kid you not. You can't make this stuff up. So Canadian House Speaker apologizes for recognition of a veteran who fought for Nazis. I watched this. I don't know what he invited the guy because he heard he had fought the Russians in World War II and he was a Ukrainian, and Zelensky was visiting the Canadian. You're crying.
I am crying.
So Zelensky was speaking to the Canadian Parliament, right?
Right.
And the Canadian speaker says, I would like to recognize while we are here a gentleman who is a naturalized Canadian citizen, blah, blah, blah. I'm paraphrasing. 98-year-old, what's his name? 98-year-old Yaroslav Honka. Yaroslav Honka, please stand to be recognized because you as a Ukrainian have fought the Russians yourself. Except that he did so as a member of the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS. And so Yaroslav Honka was overwhelmed with emotion and stood up while the parliament gave him a standing ovation. And Zelensky applauded quite vociferously, you can imagine.
I'm sure.
And then it came out, no, you got it wrong, dude. He didn't fight them because he was a resistance fighter for Ukraine. He fought them.
So they didn't know.
He fought them because he was a freaking Nazi.
They didn't know before all that.
And you got to look back at your
oh,
history.
Right.
Yes.
You got to remember these things.
You got to look back at your history. The Russians were, I mean, it was not the time when there was a Ukrainian resistance truly against unless you were Jewish, but even that was the Russians. So if you're fighting the Russians in World War II, you're probably not on our side. Speaker of the Canada's, you can't make this stuff up. Wow. Speaker of Canada's House of Commons on Sunday apologized for praising an individual at a parliamentary meeting who served in a Nazi unit during World War II. Speaker Anthony Rota had recognized 98-year-old Yaroslav Honka as a Ukrainian hero. A Ukrainian hero. Before the Canadian Parliament. Honka, though, served in World War II as a member of the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS. Kid you not. And you can imagine Jewish rights groups were livid because the SS, those are the ones who were exterminating Jews. I mean, they were some of the worst. Rota said in a statement he took responsibility for what he characterized as a mere oversight entirely of my own. I got news, dude. You're the Speaker of the freaking Parliament. Maybe you ought to do your homework before you bring this. And
I mean, I wonder what was going through the guy's head. I mean, the one that I'm like, okay, they're actually cheering for me.
Well, first of all, he had to be invited there.
Right.
So he's like, oh,
well, all right.
I guess all's been forgiven. I guess I'll show up.
I guess they're okay with this.
Yes. My niece shall help me in because I'm 98 years old, and we shall go and sit, and then I'll stand to my feet. Emotion overcomes me as I am recognized from being a member of the SS by Canada, who was at war with Nazi Germany, by the way. All right, I got more of this stuff. Things like you look at it and go, you can't make this stuff up. Like what's happening with the guy who's coming across the border illegally and his little friend? I'll tell you about that next. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. That would be this one. That would be Alabama. I'm talking about this show. Woo! Goes way down south of Birmingham and up north of Huntsville and Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. I'll tell you who else who covers some major ground, by the way. That's our friends over at ZLA Solutions. ZLA Solutions at zlausa.com. That's where you can find them. But ZLA Solutions, man, they are just epic good at what they do. I've known these folks for a while, and they are friends of mine. They cover our entire listening area, which is pretty broad and beyond, by helping businesses, big name businesses, to basically make their businesses better. They can do things like help you with logistics and warehousing and quality control and sorting and containment and all that kind of stuff. But they also, man, their bread and butter at ZLA Solutions remains staffing. You need people. It doesn't matter whether it's onesies and twosies with special niche, hard to find skills, or whether, in fact, you actually need an entire shift of people. So just tell them what you need. They'll help you do the recruiting, the background checks, the drug testing, all of it. Blue collar, white collar, no collar, it don't matter. ZLA Solutions, and you can find them on their website at zlausa.com. That's ZLA Solutions at zlausa.com. Do me the favor of telling them, too, by the way, you heard about it on Right Side Radio. Boomer, turn your camera on because we're going to get your reaction to this. Okay. Southern border. It's a mess, right?
Oh, complete mess.
All right. Southern border. Like, there's got to be a reason why you have a border. You basically control the flow in and out of your country. You control trade. You control smuggling. You control access to things that could harm the U.S. people.
Yeah.
All right.
All kinds of stuff.
All right. Well, I think I saw that the highest level of daily illegal crossings in one day occurred yesterday. I want to say there was something like 13,000 in one day or something like that.
The ones we know about.
Yeah, that we know about. And now, story on Red State. After all this transpired on our southern border, at last, we have crossed the line into the truly absurd as a Venezuelan man is about to be allowed to enter the U.S. illegally because he's Venezuelan. Because President Biden issued basically the y'all come to Venezuela. Y'all come.
Y'all come on.
In fact, let's just go ahead and say Venezuela, y'all come. That's just where it is. He's not even, if you're poor or downtrodden, no, just, hey, Venezuela, pick up and come on. We'll make you the 51st state. Why not? During the weeks, here's the guy's name is Yasin. He doesn't want to tell us his full name. Yasin and Nico migrated from Venezuela. They navigated dangerous jungles over a dead body, they say at one point. The two are so inseparable that Yasin even sold his phone so both of them had enough bus money to continue their journey. And now, as Yasin prepares to finally enter the U.S., it's likely, though, he may have to leave Nico behind. Yasin can cross the border. Nico can't. Because Nico is a squirrel.
I was wondering who Nico was. I was waiting for it. I was like, where's it going?
Y'all aren't watching the live stream. You need to, because I thought Boomer was going to have a hemorrhage. All right, so yeah, Yasin declined to give his full name because he didn't want any repercussions back home because, I don't know, maybe he stole the squirrel. I don't know. But it said, coming up here, he left behind what he had to, but going without Nico was out of the question. But Mexico may be where they are forced to part their ways.
I'm sorry, Nico. You're
going
to have to stay on that side of the line.
Bless little Nico's heart. Yasin is obviously missing an opportunity here, it says, because if he claims Nico is an emotional support squirrel, he might be able to get him across the border.
Let's just let Nico identify something else.
Nico now identifies as, I don't know what, a kilo of cocaine. Therefore, you're allowed to cross. These kinds of things are supposedly why we have border controls. We can't have squirrels possibly carrying disease just strolling across the border unchecked. People, no worries at all. Come one, come all, they say. Anyway, it points out the situation on our southern border has been intolerable for quite a while, and the ridiculous tale of Yasin and Nico is just not a compelling emotional tale of bonding between a man and a pet tree rat. It's just a vivid illustration, actually, of how absurd our situation has gotten.
Wow.
Could you hit me some jackassery on that one? You just got to.
That's a good one. I was gonna say I can't, but that is a good one. Okay, what if he just told him, hey, Nico, I mean, if he's his perfect pet squirrel, I'm sure Nico will comply and listen to his master and say, hey, Nico, just run down the fence, hop over yourself, and I'll meet you on the other side.
This is not Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, this is
You
a
never
squirrel.
know. You don't know. Maybe it
It's a
is
squirrel.
Rocket. Hey, listen, I had a pet squirrel.
You had a pet squirrel?
Yeah, up in Nashville, outside of the gym that I was coaching at one day, it was just these squirrels, and one became our pet. We called him our shop squirrel, and he lived in our shop with us, and then we handed him off to a friend that actually built like a whole squirrel cage in their house. Like, I'm talking as big as this room. We gave the squirrel back. Not back to them, but
I'm seeing a whole side of you I didn't know existed.
Right, he was a cool squirrel.
Was his name Nico?
No, it wasn't Nico though. Well, maybe, I mean, who knows? Maybe
Was he a
maybe it was
Venezuelan squirrel?
No, I wonder, are Venezuelan squirrels different? I mean,
We
it could be like Rocket.
We can't have
like
them. We
off
can't
the
have them
Guardians of the Galaxy.
crossbreeding with our American squirrels. We can't have that interracial squirrel stuff going on. Not around here. Oh man. Good Lord. How about this one? You seen? So John Fetterman. I started to say earlier. Yeah. Okay. I started to say earlier. I wrote a new piece that came out in 1819 News today. It's being published around the state by other periodicals, including our friend Alif Mathens, Athens Now, and Scott Buttram's Trustful Tribune, and others. But John Fetterman can apparently, and I said in my piece, he can apparently dress like a unshaven, half-dressed college kid who stayed up all night playing Call of Duty and just suddenly remembered he had a term paper to write and run in the door doing whatever he's got to do. That's our U.S. Senator there from Pennsylvania. So theblaze.com has a piece that took a spin off of a New York Post article dated yesterday. It says New York Post reporter John Levine decided to see if that same dress code would fly in some of the nicest restaurants in the Big Apple. So Levine put on a hoodie and sweatpant or shorts, and he went first to Daniel on the Upper East Side, where a 7-course tasting menu runs about $275. And the maitre d' said he would not be permitted here. So then he went to La Bernardine, where the maitre d' named Julian says no athletic wear would be allowed. But La Bernardine's wine director, Aldo said that jackets and pants were on loan to those who did not seem capable of reading the room. Then he went to the 2-star Jean-Georges near Columbus Circle, which has a 10-course tasting menu that costs around $368. And the restaurant would not allow him inside because he wore the short pants. And then the employee said, I don't care if you're Lady Gaga. People don't come in dressed like that. But he was allowed to use the restroom while he was there. So I'm looking at this and just thinking, this is where we are, by the way. Fetterman is allowed to go onto the floor of the U.S. Senate in the place where they do things like confirm generals, declare war, and raise and hopefully lower taxes and sometimes pass a budget. Fetterman is allowed to go on there looking like he rolled out of bed and just like a bum and just coming in the door, and he gets to vote on laws that affect millions of people. But you can't go in some of the nicer restaurants in the city of New York. They want, this Julian will tell you this is unacceptable in our establishment. You are not welcome here, sir. You shall turn around and go back out the door. Thank you very much for your time. I got a couple of calls. Which one are they in line? Are they in order yet? Line 1. Is that Allie? Allie from Athens. How are you, my friend?
I am well, and you guys are cracking me up so much I can hardly spit out what I want to say. But here are my 2 comments, and they're condensed. The first one is regarding the would-be honoree from Ukraine that turned out to have
Be a Nazi.
for the SS. And my comment in my text was, it seems that the emperor is attempting to convince us once again that he has a perfectly tailored set of new clothes. But then it occurred to me as we were talking about Nico, we're going to go for the emperor again. And here, stick with me, Colonel. Do you remember The Emperor's New Groove? It was one of Disney's best movies. It had John Goodman in the voices and David Spade. So anyway, point being that there is actually a guy in that movie that's named Kronk. And Kronk is the beef for the evil queen. He's the bodyguard, and he also speaks fluent squirrel. He's the
squirrel.
Yeah, he's the squirrel chirp. And the movie ends up with Kronk actually finding his groove as a permanent squirrel interpreter that is developing Squirrel Scouts in the Emperor's new groove. And so I'm wondering, well, maybe Yassini or whatever the guy's name is, maybe he'll get duly employed on the U.S. side by being Kronk the
I feel a mission coming. I feel a new mission. That way he can be here on a work visa and he won't have to be illegal.
That's exactly right. And you know that our taxpayer dollars want to support this endeavor.
That's absolutely do. I feel far more comfortable now that I recognize he could have gainful employment here as a squirrel whisperer. That'd be great.
Seeing as my job in Iraq a lot of time was to be a cinema therapist, I would find the movies that would make the need taken care of in the moment. I would like to, as a quasi-professional, toss out the prospect of all y'all going home tonight and watching The Emperor's New Groove and see if you can get through it and keep a straight face.
See you, my friend. I'll take one more call for the break. I got to take one before I go to the break real quick. Sparky, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, now, enjoyed the squirrel conversation. I'm a big fan of all the wildlife that is on my land, and I feed the squirrels and the birds and some raccoons. So there it is. Hey,
nice.
I had a quick thought.
Yeah.
It's perplexing to most people with any sense of reason why the Democrats are pushing Biden and Harris again.
Yeah.
Because they're an embarrassment. They're the old guy is suffering from Alzheimer's badly. I don't think he's going to live another year. And then Harris, she's obviously a dimwit and utterly unaccomplished. But I think they're such perfect stooges that the people behind the scenes who are really making all the decisions and in bed with China and all our enemies and trying to destroy this country, I'm talking the Clintons and Barack Obama and George Soros, the people really in power behind the scenes. They're content to just let it ride and let these two pinheads go into the election again. But even more concerning, and tell me if you agree at all, it's concerning to me that they're doing it despite the spectacular failures of these two people, because I think they know how to cheat and win no matter what happens, and no matter what the Democrat voters want, and certainly no matter what the tax-paying citizens want. What do you think? I think they've figured out how they're going to cheat and win no matter what, and it scares the living crap out of them.
Well, yes, with barely 30 seconds left, I'll go ahead and tell you real quickly. I do think they've figured out their cheating mechanisms, but I think that right now we have become so attuned to the idea of them cheating that they know that can't be the only thing. I think part of their goal here is they recognize that right now these two are just sock puppets, and they can make them do whatever they want them to do, and so it's more gainful for them to keep them in play because they truly are malleable. They're as malleable as Play-Doh. That's my thought right now. We got a couple of Gumbies in there right now. They can bend them however they want to.
I have stronger words, but Gumby's good enough.
Gumby's good enough.
Thanks for letting me on.
Thanks, Sparky. Appreciate it. You got to run to a break. I ran a little bit long. Got a ton of texts all of a sudden. I mean, that's Josh from Coleman said that's some serious jackassery. So you guys stay tuned. We'll come right back and wrap it up. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Solid conservative and just plain right. So is Nico the squirrel the new mascot for Right Side?
It may be. I was thinking about it. I was like, maybe we need a pet squirrel.
I mean, kind of like I picture like the smiling squirrel, kind of like the Bucky's beaver, just grinning
What
at
about
us.
the Ice Age squirrel thing?
Oh,
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's. So hey, I'll tell you what. Let me do one more story. I mean, I have a stack of them, but I'm not going to get to all of them. Like, I'm not going to get to the one about Biden deciding to go and walk the picket line at the UAW as they destroy the economy. That's awesome. I'm not going to talk about the one in detail about the Department of Homeland Security hiring the former CIA directors who also, by the way, had said that the Hunter Biden laptop wasn't real. It's I'm not going to go over those stories in detail. I got this one, though. One more in the you can't make this stuff up. You may be aware Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey, Democrat from New Jersey, was just indicted. We talked about it last week. He was indicted, I think, Friday. And the indictment is like, wow. I mean, this is not a normal indictment where the evidence will show. No, this is like he did this on this day and his wife did this on this day, and they had $450,000 in cash and some gold bricks in a safe deposit box, and they had this, and we saw them handing off cash in the parking lot, and it went on and on and on. Senator Bob Menendez has now hired his attorney to help him defend the charges. He's been indicted. He's going to have to. That's the same attorney who's defending Hunter Biden. Story on the Daily Wire. Boomer just gives me the look like you could have seen this coming a mile away. Now, I will say this. Menendez has been in trouble before. This was the same attorney he had in 2015. So it's not like he didn't have a prior relationship with this attorney. CNBC reports Menendez hired Abby Lowell to represent him in the case, the same lawyer who he hired in 2015 in a similar corruption case, although legal experts have said the current case is much stronger. The federal indictment was unsealed against Menendez on Friday. It accused the senator and his wife of accepting bribes from 3 business people in exchange for actions he took as chairman of the powerful Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Let me ask you a question. What is Hunter Biden in trouble for, Boomer?
What is he in trouble for?
Yes, taking money, right?
Right. I mean, money and
from foreign countries. Who's the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee?
Right there. Wow.
Bob Menendez. So, and you look at it and go, it's unrelated, Phil. It's apples and oranges. Is it? Is it really? Because what we saw with Joe Biden with Ukraine, for instance, is Hunter Biden needed some action done by Daddy. Daddy took some official action as a government elected official, and then Hunter Biden got paid money. Now we're seeing that Hunter Biden, who may have been trying to curry favor on behalf of his foreign clients, is sharing the same attorney in his indictments and his charges and his investigations as the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. If there is anything that lawyer needs to know, he's going to know on behalf of both clients. If there's anything that needs to be impeded in an investigation, one lawyer can now impede all of it. I just throw that out there for consumption. You can't make this stuff up.
Wow.
Just saying. Groovy show today, man, says Jeff from Indiana, who is still stuck in hippie mode. Josh from Coleman says, now that's some jackassery right there. JT from Lacey Springs says, yeah, standing ovation of the Nazi, that's some jackassery. And the band, Guess Who, Venezuelan Squirrel, Get Away From Me, E. I guess he's singing. Kenneth from Somerville says, Nico the Squirrel must have voted for Trump. It's banned at the border. Can't come in. All right, you guys. Have an amazing night. Boomer and I back here tomorrow at 2. Right Side Radio. We love you. We'll see you then.